am Emily Lepping. I've been with the Learning House a little over 2 years in our training department. I've been a technical trainer with a couple different companies in the real estate field and a few other things. I am good at explaining how things work, and that's why they wanted me to come up here and talk to you about Moodle. How many of you guys have attended a webinar that I did over the past 2 years? Anybody? All right, thanks for self-reporting there. And this is Matt Wilson.
Yeah, I'm Matt Wilson. I've been with the Learning House since January of 2011, so about a year and a half I've been here. When I first came on, I was a client services specialist. I've probably talked to some of you before, and now I'm in the training department since last fall. And I do webinars like Emily does, so I may have had some of you in there. Also create some training tutorials, so you may have heard my voice on a training tutorial as well. And that's pretty much it.
How many of you guys are using Moodle One now? Anybody using Moodle 2 yet? Yeah, yes and no? All right. Okay. We are going to be talking today about the transition from Moodle 1 to Moodle 2, and we're going to briefly go over a few highlight items, a few big changes. So these are things that I know we have been sort of, really hoping for. Really, a few things that we were excited about Moodle doing and bringing on board in Moodle 2, and so we want to show these to you. And we're going to be switching back and forth between our PowerPoint and Moodle. Like I said earlier, in case you guys weren't here, I'm very used to being interrupted, so stop me at any time. You can use the microphone if you want to ask a question, or you can, stay in your chair if you're in the middle of a row. And we'll repeat that so that our videographer in the back can hear you. Let's get this show on the road. So one of the first changes in Moodle 2 that has been brought, is a big change, is something called certainty-based marking. Anybody heard of this before? Okay, so basically what this does is it asks a student to decide how certain they are when they're answering a question. Now, not an economics major. I don't have a degree in that. So my answer here would be that I am not very certain. So less than 67%. The only way to get full credit on a question like this is to have the correct answer and be 100% certain. So that vary more than 80. So if you mark that you're very certain and you have the correct answer, you'll get full credit for that. The worst, of course, option is to get it wrong and be very certain. And so that's going to get you the least amount of credit. And in fact, there's an opportunity here for students to make negative points on a question. So there's a possibility here that a student could do a detriment to themselves with regard to this quiz. Yeah, just come right up here. And so when we begin talking about this certainty-based marking feature, what we joke about all the time in our department is that the person who uses this is probably going to be considered the meanest teacher on the block. So for this reason, we recommend that you maybe don't use it for a midterm or a final, because, nobody wants to be the meanest teacher. Yeah, go right ahead.
I haven't heard about this in terms of academic integrity or the purpose behind this or scoring in terms of a theory or a learning approach. I'm concerned about this. Maybe I'm more surprised.
So the question that was asked was that he hasn't heard anything academic about the purpose for this kind of tool. And we're recommending it to assess learning and assess knowledge. So maybe this would be a really, really low point value quiz, a 5-question quiz, a pop quiz, something like that, so that you can assess knowledge and students can see where they are in terms of what they know and what they think they know. I don't have any data for you on on what the what academic says about it, but we can certainly find something. So let's talk later. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I've used this kind of setup as a learner, and when it's like a flashcard study type stuff.
Okay, so you've used this not in a quiz setting necessarily, but in flashcards and that kind of thing, so where you're preparing for a major exam or something like that. Sure. I saw a hand back there, maybe? Question? Okay. So this is what certainty-based marking looks like. It tells us what the correct answer is. I have a clicker. Sorry, this tells us that the correct answer was C, and in fact we chose D. So because we had said that we were fairly certain, a base mark of 0 points was adjusted to negative 0.67 points for the question. So we received negative credit for this question right here. Like I said, meanest teacher on the block right here.
Whoops.
It's okay.
You go back.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take over the rubrics part. What Moodle 2 has done is it's created something called assignment rubrics, and this is where instructors can create rubrics in Moodle and grade with those rubrics. Do a lot of people use rubrics already? Okay, cool. You might have an interest in this then. Let's see what we got here. This is basically what it looks like. And the example you see here is one that's already graded. You have the spelling, follows directions, relevant arguments, and grammatically correct, all on a scale here. The ones you see in green are the ones that you selected for the student. And the little boxes at the end there are the feedback you would provide. And the student, when they come into Moodle, they'll be able to see this rubric, see which ones you picked, and also see your feedback as well. And it's probably going to be a lot easier if I show this to you in Moodle. You have a question?
I'm just wondering if the rubrics can be used with forum discussions as well.
I don't think so. That's an excellent question, and I'll get back to you on that. Because you may get some of those answers from us sometime. But,
this is what the brain bar is for, folks.
Yeah.
If everybody noticed the brain bar this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. If we don't know your answer here, we're going to find that answer and meet us at the brain bar later, okay?
Yeah, definitely. All right, hang on one second. I'm going to try to pull up the... It's already there. All right. And so first off, if you have an assignment you want to use a rubric for, the way you would go into select to create that rubric is that you would find the assignment. And now this is Moodle 2. So if some of you haven't seen it before, this may look a little different. Does it look different to most of you? Okay, yeah, Moodle 2 is kind of just a different view. And that kind of takes some adjustment, just the way the menus are laid out and things like that.
We'll be talking about this a little bit more later, but I think with Moodle 1, most people are used to seeing blocks on both sides of the screen, and you'll notice that everything has been pushed over to the right side for Moodle 2. We'll be talking about this a little bit more later because we have a few options with regard to that. But go ahead, Matt.
All right. So if we scroll down and we want to create a rubric for this assignment, we would select the assignment. And you have the settings block here to the right, and you would look for the advanced grading page. And from there you have an option to create a new rubric from scratch or to create a new grading form from a template. Now what the create a new grading form from a template is basically it means you're using a rubric that you've already created for another course. So if you make a rubric for one course, that rubric is attached to your Moodle profile and you can use it in your other courses as well. So you can select that rubric here, make any changes to it you want to, and then use it as a rubric for this course. So most of the time you're going to be creating your own if you haven't done that yet. And this is kind of what that page looks like. And I'm not going to go into detail here just because we'd be here all day, and I doubt you would actually retain any of it because it's kind of a mess. But what you would have is you would add your criterion here, and you would add your points here by simply adding the level, whatever level that is, you would add your points here. You could add more levels. And this is how basically you would set up your rubric from this page. Does this kind of look easy to use to you guys? Yes, question?
So will there be like a rubric bank in Moodle that's
answers could draw from?
That's a great question.
That's a great question. I think that one of the things that we'll be implementing is the ability for people to import rubrics, because I know that they can be exported. So we can, if you contact us, that'll be one of the things we'll be able to help you with. Is if you say, I want the rubric from, Geology 101 in my course, then we'll be able to pull that for you.
But you're saying there's not going to be some established templates or some starting points?
At this point in time, they're tied to your profile. So if you go in and create a rubric for yourself, then that'll be accessible to you across any course you teach. Or if you're co-teaching a course, then you can put that course, that rubric in place, if you have created it and maybe your co-teacher hasn't or something like that. But because they're tied to your profile, you'll have access to anything you've created as a template, which is not up on the screen right now. So, and then we can import those if we need to.
Can I ask a question about Moodle One and Moodle Two? Will eventually everybody go to Moodle Two? Is it just a process? Can you pick Moodle One or Two? Or?
That's a great question. I realize that I haven't been asking these over the microphone, so I'm sorry. Yes, so the question was, will everybody eventually be moving to Moodle 2? All Learning House partner schools will be moving to Moodle 2 over the next 18 months. So we understand that this transition is a big one, and we're going to make it as easy as possible on you guys, and we're going to handhold you just like we do with everything else. So just let us know. And you can talk to your account manager if you'd like to move forward on this process a little bit faster. That's something we can definitely help expedite.
In the back.
If you already have rubrics in Excel or some other format, can you import it in here, or do you have to first create it in the Moodle itself?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. If you have a rubric in Excel or in another format, can we bring that in? Can we import it here? I don't have an answer for you, so check back with me at the brain bar, and I'll find out.
Can I just add to that question then? If it's not something that can be added from Excel, will that be something that in course development, the client service specialist or the publishing department will put in for us?
Absolutely. The question is this something that your client services specialist or your course developer can help create for you? And this is absolutely the case. Just like if you let us know how you want your grade book to look, or how many points you want on would you want a quiz, or you want a quiz to consist of so many questions, we can create that for you automatically. This is exactly the same kind of thing. We can import that for you. We can create the rubric for you. If you give it to us in a Word document or an Excel document, we can make that happen.
Yes.
Can you wait, like in most grade books, can you wait a level on here? So you wait a discussion followed over the grammar and syntax and all that. You know how to do that?
You would do that via points. The question was, can you weight a certain category as being worth more than another category? If discussion, if we're talking about the quality of a discussion being worth more than the syntax of a discussion, then that might be worth 50 points, a maximum of 50 points where the syntax was only worth 25.
And I want to also add that we'll have a tutorial that kind of explains this too. So if you're really interested in using it later, there's going to be documentation and tutorials out there that you'll have access to that you can reference.
And we'll do plenty of webinars, we promise.
Webinars, all kinds of things. And so this is how you would set them up. And like I said, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. What I am going to show you is what it looks like to actually grade a student's response with a rubric.
We have a sample assignment here that a student has submitted for us. And so we're going to take a look at that and grade that assignment. So you can see that we're here at the assignment page, and just like normally, here's the draft of what the student uploaded. So you would click on that file and you would download that, and then you click the grade button.
And so this is standard what it looks like. So it's very simple to use. You would select your points here. You would provide feedback. The student did a great job, and he was awesome.
Content looks like it's a little weak, Matt.
Oh, okay. We're going to add some awesome feedback here.
And as you can see, we have a feedback option at each level of the rubric, each specific option there. And then there's finally, can you scroll back down for me? There's this final feedback down here. So if you wanted to upload a file in response, we have that option as well. It's down at the bottom. There we go. So here's your option to upload a file in response. And this is one of the other new things that's new in Moodle 2. I know in Moodle 1, there's only one particular assignment type where you can upload a file in response. And that's kind of frustrating to us too. I see a few of you shaking your heads. That's been fixed in Moodle 2. So any assignment type that requires an upload from a student can be replied to via upload by the instructor.
Is it still as flaky as one where you have to actually upload the file before you put comments in? Because if you do it afterwards, it wipes it all out?
Somebody's asked about the flakiness of Moodle 1.
We don't know what you're talking about.
I know what you're talking about. You're right. That was an issue that we ran into quite a bit, where if you had typed a comment or put a grade in and then uploaded a file in response, that comment and grade went missing, and they fixed that too. You guys are way too excited about that.
All right, so I've assigned this. Is there any more questions? I'm sorry. All right. So we've assigned a grade. I'm going to save this, and now I'm going to show you what it looks like to the student when they come in to view the assignment after it's been graded. So now I'm logged in as a student in this window, just so you know what's going on. Sorry, I have to fix one more thing here.
Should already be done.
Sorry about that.
I think we're dealing with a cache issue here.
Aha, there we go. All right, so what the student's going to see when so the student says they've got a grade, they want to see what the rubric says. So they come back into the assignment here, and they're going to be able to see the rubric just as you saw it when you graded it. And they're also going to be able to see the feedback you've left here. And there's the big feedback box, too, if you remember, so for more extended feedback. And that's what it looks like from the student. And they're also going to see the response files here, just like they did in Moodle 1, any response files you uploaded, as well as their assignment that they uploaded.
On the individual criteria, is there any restriction on how much you can put in there?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. You mean how many characters you can add? I'm not entirely sure about that. I would have to look into that.
The question, just for anybody else who didn't hear, was how many characters can you type into the feedback box for the individual criteria? We're going to go ahead and say there isn't a limit for now. We might change that later at the brain bar. If you want to show up, make sure. We'll test it out there.
Normally with the rubrics like that, do we get to put more information in each of those little boxes across through there?
Great question. So the question is, are you limited to the very minimal amount of information that we have typed in these boxes? And the answer is no. You can put quite a bit of information in there for students.
Come on, this here?
Yeah. So you can, these boxes will allow you to type a lot of information. And this will take quite a few characters in these boxes. I know in other rubrics that we have played around with, I don't think we have access to them on the accounts that we're in right now, but we can show them to you in the brain bar later. They're very, very lengthy descriptions of what it takes to meet certain requirements. So we are not limited with that at all. Any other questions about rubrics? Everybody excited?
Is there a limit to the number of criteria or the number of scans?
If there is, I imagine this can go to a pretty high number. I'm not entirely sure if.
Columns as well?
Yeah, you can add multiple levels as well.
I think they tried to make this as flexible as we wanted
Yeah.
it to be.
Yeah, you can see that once you get in here, it's kind of simple to to figure out. But we have a lot of training resources on how to do these. So
And this is only available on the assignments type items, or are there other things that the rubric is available on?
Pretty sure that Rubric is available for any activity, but we'll talk about that later at the brain bar.
I think one question was about forums, and we'll have to figure that out. All right. That's if we're good with rubrics, we're going to continue on to. This is you.
It is. So one of the other things that we wanted to spend some time talking about with regard to Moodle 2 is some minor changes. I'm going to, so that we don't have to keep switching back and forth from the PowerPoint to Moodle, I'm just going to put this up here and note that we're going to go through all of these 5 items in the next few minutes. So you can hold me to this if you want to. I will get to all of them. Block docking, which forgive me if I mistake those 2 words because they rhyme and it's very tricky. I have been calling that the wrong thing all week. So let's go ahead and flip back over to Moodle. Block docking is one of those features that Moodle has built into it that we have the ability, depending on theme, to turn off or turn on. So when I say theme, what I mean is how the portal looks. The colors that the Kentucky Council for Post-Secondary Education colors and logo look a little bit different from your school's colors and logo. So when we alter the theme, we can alter the ability to block docs as well. And so what that means, if we are talking about blocking docs, is there's a little blue icon. Where's my pointer? Okay, so there's a little blue icon right here. And if Matt will click on that for me, you'll notice that the blocks are suddenly available over here. And so we can get rid of all of these and expand the course page so that it's quite a bit larger and less complicated. And then as we hover over them, thank you, as we hover over them, they expand out, and we can see each individual item in that particular block. So we still have full access to it. We're just seeing it in a little bit different view, kind of.
Is that something you have to do, or does the local admin do that locally?
Okay, so the question is block docking something that we turn on, or is that something that the local administrator can do? And the answer is that the ability to block docs is something that we can turn on for you. However,
are you
and
talking
it's
about like
portal-wide.
individual? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I'm going to get into that. But as far as seeing the blocks as docked, that's entirely up to you. So if I dock my blocks, then they're docked for me. But they're not docked for any of the students in my class. They're not docked for my administrator. They're not docked for my fellow instructors or anything. It's tied to your profile. So your view of Moodle in every single course will be to see blocks as docked if you block the docs. I feel like I deserve a round of applause for not screwing that up. Thank you very much. Yes. The question is, do the students have the ability to block docs? And the answer is that yes. They can block docs and clock rocks and bind socks. And
Are you restricted to the docs being on the left only?
you are, the question was, are you restricted to the blocks being docked on the left? And the answer is yes, you are. We do not have the ability to block the docs to a different location at this time. Still, this does a nice thing for your course as far as making it considerably less confusing if you're just trying to get an overview of the page. Or if you're looking at grading in the grade book, this makes everything a little bit easier to read.
Does it actually widen that middle column then, so you can get more space within it, or is it?
That's something we're working on with our programming department right now, is so that we can find a way to make that stretchable for you guys. Yeah, because it's a problem for us as well. Trust me, we're not a fan of it. Yes, in the back.
Your Learning House activity block
Uh-huh.
that you create, that'll go over there as well? 'Cause that was always kind of nice to have that right in front for the professors to actually see that.
Can you expand on what you mean by the Learning House activity block?
The recent activity block?
No, my understanding was you guys created a retention activity block.
Ah, tricky. So the blocks, you're asking about blocks that we've specifically created.
Correct. It's nice to have those embedded the fact to always see that versus moving to the left there can be very, I suppose, hidden. And
Yes.
not as upfront to them. So how do
So the question is, can you block certain docs? I screwed it up. Can you dock certain blocks, but keep other blocks available? And the answer is yes. So if you want to keep, say, the settings block open and available because that's what you're using the most right now, then yes, you can keep settings, and then once you click down there, you'll have access to the full settings. Now we're not showing a whole lot of settings right now because the page that we're actually in is called the My Home page. This is another new thing that Moodle has brought about. And what's really lovely about the My Home page, some of you may have used this before. We had a few different partners who used the My Moodle page previously. And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't my favorite. It was kind of ugly, and I turned it off anywhere I could find it. But it just made things a lot more confusing. The My Home page, however, is brilliant in its design. Basically, what we're seeing here is that I have a course overview of every course that I'm in. So this online text assignment that's due for me at the end of the month, at a specific time, I can tell whether or not I've submitted it yet and whether or not it's been graded. This particular assignment, I can see that I haven't even submitted it yet. And then this forum discussion assignment right here, I can tell that I have had 2 people reply to a post that I made since I last logged in. So this does a really nice job at providing an overview summary on a per course basis for students about what's going on in that course. Okay, I know I had a few other questions about block docking, and I want to see if anybody has questions about the My Home page. No? Brilliant.
Private files?
Private files. Okay, so this last section that we're going to talk about on this page is the My Private Files section right up here. This is where Moodle has basically created cloud storage for students. There isn't a lot of storage here, so don't, tell them they can upload videos and that kind of thing to this. That's just going to get everybody in trouble. But if you're working on an assignment, you want to have access to that on campus and at home and at work. And you want to make sure that everywhere you work on it is going to have the same version of the assignment. This is really helpful. We have the ability here for students to store a few files. I'm not exactly sure what the file restriction is yet. I can find that out for you. I'll talk to my IT department. But it's a little limited. Obviously, we're not going to be giving each student gigs and gigs of space. But they'll have access to any file that they upload here, and it will be privately accessible only by them. So your files, as instructors, you can upload private files here. Those won't be accessible by students at all. This is, again, another one of those things that Moodle has built that's tied to your profile. Yes?
Just a general question, and then for this to be, is this a Learning House Moodle specific tweak, or is this a Moodle 2.0?
This is a Moodle To Tweak.
And, well, just for this in the future, if there is something that is more that Learning House has tweaked a little further than would be in Moodle 2, could you please mention that?
Yeah, I will. For anybody who is working on Moodle 2 on their own campus, if they're not working on a Learning House server, I absolutely can mention that. Okay.
She got a question.
Yes.
Will students have access to the files they've uploaded once the course ends?
As long as a student has access to a course, they have access to the files in that course that they've uploaded. Generally, student access to a course is something that we restrict at 180 days, I believe. I think that's what our service level agreement says right now. Your account manager can provide you more information about that. And if we have a special circumstance where a student needs access, 200, 300 days out of a course, we can help with that.
To these documents in particular, so if they've uploaded an assignment and then the course ends and then they're in their next class, but they want to go back and look at one of these assignments?
If it's uploaded to the My Private Files section, they'll have access to it at any time. It's not restricted by that 180 days. Sorry, I forgot to mention the question for everybody. The question was regarding student access and My Private Files and student access to course files, items that they've specifically uploaded into a course. So anything that they upload to My Private Files is again tied to their profile. They'll have access to that regardless of how access to the course may change. Questions?
Were you indicating earlier that that Moodle is hosted both at learninghouse.com, but also can be hosted on university servers?
Yes, I was indicating that.
Okay, and so then can the private file restriction be expanded if it's on university
I
servers?
believe the answer to that is yes. I believe you can. It provides students more cloud hosting in Moodle if you're using a different server base.
We
Yes.
should clarify though that with Learning House, we host Moodle, and what we do with universities is provide access so that the domain can be a subdomain of the university, but Learning House does all Moodle hosting for the ones that it supports.
Thank you, everybody. If you haven't met Victoria Alexander, she's one of our vice presidents. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. We had one other question.
When they're uploading their files to an assignment, do they have to then go through the upload process to put it in My Private Files, or is it just a check mark to say, save this in My Files?
Great question. They need to upload it there is an upload process. Moodle has changed their upload process a little bit, so let's walk through that real quickly. Basically, we would click the Add button right here, and this asks us if we want to access recent files, anything that's been added to our private files, server files, or upload a file from our computer. So if we were uploading this for an assignment, this file picker would give us the option of selecting something that's in our private files already. And so we could just select that or select something that we have uploaded recently to another part of the course perhaps. So yes, the upload file process here has gotten a little bit cleaner with Moodle 2. It does give students the opportunity to, when they have uploaded files to their private files area, transfer those to an assignment a lot more easily.
Emily, how much training or tutorial things are going to be on the site for our students to transition to this new?
Ooh, gosh, it's like I seeded that question in the audience. The question is, how many tutorial options are there going to be for students? For Moodle 2, we have created full student documentation. And when we transition your portal to Moodle, we provide that student documentation in two places for students, on the old portal and on the new portal. So it's accessible to them in both areas. The other item is that Matt actually has created 6 tutorial videos. And so those are hosted on YouTube, on our Learning House YouTube channel. We will have blocks in your new portals that send students directly to those YouTube videos, and so they can access those on mobile devices, they can access them on their computers, they can access them anywhere.
Question in the back?
With Moodle 2.3 or whatever version it's going to be, is that accessible on the mobile app then for all of the institutions?
The ability to turn on the mobile theme for mobile devices is something that we can do if you'd like us to. That would be a request that you need to make through your account manager, and we can help with that, facilitate that process. There is one of the themes that has been developed for Moodle 2 is a mobile theme. I will have an iPad displaying the mobile theme at the brain bar later if anybody wants to check that out. Okay.
You want messaging?
Yes, let's talk about messaging. Thank you, I couldn't even remember what was next. Okay, one of the other things that has changed with Moodle 2 is the ability to set messaging settings. Now, how many of you guys had frustration with Moodle 1, where you would send a message to someone within the portal and you didn't know whether they got it via email, maybe if they got it via email they replied to you via email, or you didn't know if they got it on the portal, that kind of thing. Here in Moodle 2, we have the opportunity for you to customize your notification method. So what we've got here is a single column for pop-up notifications. In other words, if I am in a portal, I want that to pop up and notify me. And then another column for email notifications. So you have the option for many of the different notifications in Moodle to select whether you want that to be pop-up, email, or both, or neither. But we're definitely going to encourage everybody to select one. Now this is, a lot of this down here regards how as instructors you will communicate with students. So a feedback reminder, does a student want to pop up about that, or do they want an email about that? An error with the site, again, a pop-up or an email. So we have a lot of different choices here, and Moodle has given us a lot more options with regard to the kind of messages that we can receive, notifications about. Yes?
And is that a default setting? Like, does the system put a default, and then you have to choose if you want to keep that?
Right, the system default is email. So if you want to set anything for pop-up, then you need to come in and set these. Yes?
How does it pop up a notification if you're offline?
It won't.
Okay, so
It'll
then
pop
you
up
just
the
get
next
all
time
those
you log
messages
in.
you get
Yeah.
one.
Mm-hmm. The question was, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to repeat the question. How does it pop up a question or a notification if you are offline? And the answer is that it'll pop up the next time you log into Moodle.
And this is not available now, the pop-up.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you send messages now in Moodle One, those will pop up as soon as you are online, as soon as you log into Moodle.
And how do I know that?
How do you?
Because I didn't know that till you just said it.
That's one of the things.
I always send to myself, and so when I get it in the email, I believe that the students have gotten it in theirs.
Sure. One of the things that we can do is check the history. This is one of the reasons that Mimi O'Malley, who is also in our training department, is going to be talking about communication within a learning management system a little bit later in the conference. I don't know. I'll get back to you on when. And one of the things she's going to be talking about is using the messaging system inside your learning management system instead of using email for communication. The reason that we like messaging is because we can track those messages. I don't mean Learning House Big Brother can track those messages. I mean you as an instructor can look at the history between you and another user and see all the communications that have happened between you and that user if you're sending messages back and forth. And that's why one of the reasons that we really like the opportunity for you to use pop-ups here is because you can turn off the email function entirely and you can say, I'm going to be communicating exclusively in Moodle with messages to and from my students, so that there's a record of that back and forth, and so that I know that I know where to go find that immediately.
And that pop-up is chosen, or is it automatic?
The pop-up automatically happens today in one.
Okay.
If you want to talk about it more at the brain bar, I'll be happy to talk about it with you. I'll even show you where to find the history and everything. Question over there?
Is there, in Moodle 2, is there functionality where you can attach a file to a private message?
I know what you're talking about, because that's one of the things that I would have really loved to see in Moodle 2, and unfortunately it's not. The ability to attach a file to a message is not something that's available yet. We're hoping that that's going to be one of the things that Moodle does pretty much constant improvements, constant upgrades, and so that's one of the things that we're hoping that they're going to be putting in place. It's one of the things that we're also talking to our developers about. Anybody else? Any more messaging questions? Okay.
Restrictions?
Yes. So the final thing we're going to talk about here is restrictions or conditions on assignments. And this is one of the things we have heard from several of you that you wanted to see. This is what I call ending with a bang. This is one of my new favorite things about Moodle. And so one of the things that we're going to do here is go down to the edit settings page for the restrictions here, or for this particular assignment, sorry. And everything, stop for a second.
All right.
Everything so far looks pretty similar, right? Anybody? How many of you guys have set up an assignment or have edited an assignment in Moodle One? Yeah? Good. That's a lot of hands. I like that. All right. So you see the assignment name, the assignment description, all that kind of thing. The available date, due date, grading options, all of this looks the same. Except when we get right down here before we click Save and Display or Save and Return to Course, and we have the opportunity to restrict access for specific items. So we could add conditions using this Add to Grade Conditions to a particular assignment. So I can add conditions based on, I can add access conditions based on date. In other words, a student won't be able to see this assignment until July 21st. And then they'll only be able to see that assignment until July 31st. The other option here, though, is this option right here for grade. So do I want a student has to complete a certain assignment, another assignment in the course, to a specific grade. So we'll say, in order to gain access to this assignment, a student has to complete the comprehensive assignment, and let's say, 1%. A student has to receive at least a 1% grade on the comprehensive assignment in order to gain access to this assignment that we're updating right now, right? So this assignment is the graded assignment, the one that we had just looked at with the rubric and everything. So when we start talking about this, if a student has completed that comprehensive assignment to at least 1% and received at least 1% as a grade, then they'll have access to this particular assignment. And we can also choose how students will see. So can students see this graded assignment at all if they are restricted from seeing it if they haven't completed the other assignment? And the options are they can see it as grayed out, as something that they can't click on, and it'll illustrate what the specific restriction is, or it can be hidden entirely. So let's go back to the course and see what this looks like for students. As you can see here, this graded assignment, it won't let me click on it, and it has this restriction item right here. So I am unable to access this particular assignment until I've completed the required score in the comprehensive assignment. So this is something that's available on quizzes. It's available on, I think, forums. And anything that has a point value can be used as an item that restricts students. So if you wanted to say a student has to receive a grade of 5 points on the introductory forum in a course where they introduce themselves and meet their other students. So in other words, they have to say something in the forum and be graded by the instructor in order to gain access to the first lesson or the second lesson maybe. And so we can set it up. We can set up a specific condition or restriction for a particular assignment so that students aren't able to access that until they meet certain conditions in the course. This is another tool that your course developer and your client services specialist will be able to help you set up. So if you ask for it, we can make sure that happens for you. Yes?
Now, even though you make it hidden here, can they also go into the grades, to their grade category and see that they're going to have this due? So now, if something is either blocked out, the student can go to the grade area
And see that it's going to be happening.
They know it's going to happen.
Sure. So
Will
that
it be the same thing here?
the question is, will hiding it here on the main page of the course also hide it on the grade book? Because that's not how Moodle One works now. I'm going to tell you that I haven't played with it. I'll get back to you. Come talk to me at the Brain Bar. Okay, thank you. So there's obviously a lot of things I'll be answering at the Brain Bar, which means I get to see a whole bunch of you again, which is exciting for me. So we'll be busy doing a lot of this. We'll have a lot of different people to talk to at the Brain Bar, and we'll be able to answer these questions. Yes?
Can this be tied into evaluations?
The question is, can it be tied to evaluations? So in other words, you're saying if a student hasn't completed a survey in the course, then they're not able to access the final exam, is I guess probably what we're getting at maybe. The answer is, if your survey has points tied to it, then yes, I believe you'll be able to do that for you. That's something that has been a little bit of a sticking point with some of our instructors and some of our schools, is that they don't believe that student evaluation should be worth points, which I totally understand. However, having been a student at one point in time, I like 5 extra credit points, and that's an easy thing to do. So that's something that we can sort of figure out at a future time. But yes, I believe we'll have the ability to do that. Other questions?
Can participation in the discussion forum be one of those restrictions?
If your discussion forum, the question is, can participation in a discussion forum be one of the restrictions? The answer is that anything can be a restriction if it requires a grade. So if yes, participation can be one of those restrictions, but it's not based on the student commenting, it's based on you grading the comment, on the instructor grading the comment. Any other questions? Okay, well, we have reached 4 o'clock. I just want to thank everybody for your attention. Matt and I will stick around and answer questions for anybody who didn't want to ask those in public, and come see us at the Brain Bar at 4:30.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.